I think it's pretty crazy to think about where I am now compared to where I used to be.
Oh my God. You did it. Hand on it. I did.
Playing baseball at 8 was definitely just me having fun. It was a lot of fun to just play with my friends and play for my dad, and it was a really good environment. Like it was all just about fun and trying to get better.
Yeah, you're playing baseball with a stick.
I think the vision was to keep him playing, and I knew that I had a kid that loved baseball a lot, and I just didn't want to screw it up, but I knew that he wanted to get better, and I knew enough to know that, like, at that time, 8 years ago, I didn't have all the tools necessary to understand what that would even entail. I was trying to learn. I already found the Driveline blog. It was like Sunday Thunder Nuggets was already in my email, but I guess I was already attracted to Driveline's approach to understanding that, like, there's the game result and then there's the skill development results. And those two things are kind of in parallel lines, but they are separate.
When he first said that we were going to start going to Kent to play at Driveline, it definitely was a big commitment, but I remember sitting down with my dad talking about, what Driveline was about and what they do. And, it sounded great, but it was definitely like one of the better decisions I made in my baseball career.
When we first stepped in the gym, and that was the first time that, like, I started to even wrap my head around the idea of, like, skills to scale as a concept. I knew that there was something there, that we knew that the game was going to change a lot, and that change was going to demand changes to skill and athletic output.
When I first started at Driveline, it was new. It was a lot different than my Little League practices. Seeing all, like, the bigger kids around me was definitely different, since I was probably 4 years younger than all of them. Also seeing people doing stuff like the motion capture, that was pretty cool, especially seeing pro players do it. It was like fascinating to see pro players around me when I was so young. When I was 8 to 10, it was definitely really cool to see how much better I got in such a small time, especially seeing things like the hit tracks. I got to actually see how far the ball would go and how hard I hit it, instead of just being on the field and trying to hit a home run.
When Danny first started coming into Driveline right before he turned 9, he was putting a training environment where every day had a goal, right? And every day had some competitive game associated to it, and you want to do the best as possible throughout both of those things, right? And the goal is going to be relative to your output, right? Are you throwing the ball harder today? Are you hitting the ball harder today? Are you hitting the ball farther today? And because the information was presented to him and all the other kids in the group so transparently, they get real signal about that in immediate fashion, which is not a thing that you get in the game.
From 11 to 13, it was definitely pretty different from 8 to 10. I started to lift a lot more weights, and I started to understand, like, a lot more of my mechanics instead of just swinging the bat. And I definitely saw the most progress probably in that time, and I saw a lot of gains from the weight room specifically. I think understanding the numbers a lot more made a big difference in how I viewed my training. I think seeing my peak go up was the most exciting thing, but as I got older, I started to understand that, how many times could I do that consistently? It really changed, my view on how good I was.
Yeah, let's go.
Positive improvement isn't linear in the sense that it's just like a straight line up. It's going to be up and down and up and down and up and down. By the time that Danny was 9, he'd been playing baseball since he was like 4 or 5 years old, and we had already seen stuff on the field where if the outcome didn't go the way that he wanted, he would get upset. And every kid is like that. But I think in a weird way, like, his drive to do better was so significant.
I think there was a lot of moments in my career where I saw a lot of, like, plateauing, and I saw myself just kind of get stuck at some point. But actually seeing the numbers and seeing how even in the best players, that's just how development worked. I think that gave me a lot more hope into like, you know, I could just keep pushing and I'll get past this point. When I was 14, I definitely started to see a lot more progress when I started taking the weight room a lot more serious. I had a lot more trainers and teammates that pushed me so much harder than I think I ever could have done myself. And I started to see the numbers go up so much more when I just started to push myself beyond the point that I thought I could actually do.
And I think in the last 3 years specifically, between the ages of like, 13 to 16, it's been a lot of understanding how to wrap your head around that type of stuff. When if we're going to train at a level of competition that might even be higher than anything you're going to see on the field, it's going to be hard and you're going to have tough days. He's been doing this stuff for so long. Those type of big beginner gain unlocks are no longer available. We think about improving skill and improving output this way. It's like it's a dam. And you have to drill so many tiny holes in that dam at this stage to make that thing break and to get unlock this new level of performance that I don't have a howitzer that I can fire at the dam anymore.
And what really made the biggest difference was the consistency at what I was doing.
The commitment's been substantial, but it's the easiest commitment to make because it's what he wants to do. And again, I think so much of the system that I lucked into when we started coming down here, and then the system that I've tried to just cultivate since I started working at Driveline, is one that compels that type of, in a technical sense, we're talking about is intrinsic motivation, right? So if you understand what intrinsic motivation means, in the sense that a child or anybody is just driven to do the thing because of what they want to do, the commitment's pretty easy. And if we've done anything right about the way that we've run this stuff for kids, is that we've incentivized them to want to lean into that intrinsic motivation. In the sense that on a day-by-day basis, the systems around here are communicating progress in a way that typically isn't communicated to kids, period, in baseball, much less in training.
I think looking back at all of my years at Driveline, seeing the progress that I made from day one to now, it's really cool to see the journey that I've been on, especially seeing all of the things I've gone through.
I think the most striking thing was the pride that I could see that he felt about what he produced. There's this idea that, you want kids to fall in love with what you would call good work. You want them to fall in love with work that is valuable, seeing that evolution of him understand that that the work that you put in to build towards this thing, which is I am a vessel for self-improvement in this one very specific regard, and that improvement brings me a type of, I can't remember what the quote is, but they call it durable joy. Not joy that is fleeting, not joy that is well, I have it for 5 seconds and then I need another dopamine hit somewhere else, but the type of durable joy that comes from earning a thing.
I think Driveline does a really good job of showing where you are compared to where you want to be. I think looking at, how big I am right now and seeing that even people that play pro right now are my size, and there's just the slight edges that I need to get better at, really helps me and really pushes me to just get to that spot and knowing that I can be that good.
What I would want anybody to take away from this story is that there's a path for your child to understand a different way to approach personal development. This stuff is highly applicable to baseball because that's the framework that we're in, right? But the approach and the mindset is multidisciplinary in application. And that's what this system is taught. And at this point, it's just a question of how far do you want to go, and how much do you want to do this thing? How much sacrifice do you want to make? How compelling is it for you to continue to want to do this thing? So now we're right back to this idea of intrinsic motivation. That's what we taught. That's what we taught. The skill stuff is secondary. The baseball stuff is tertiary. The thing that matters is teaching This idea that like, if you want to be better at this thing, it's just up to you. You're not competing with that kid. You're not competing against that coach. It's not about that roster spot. It's about you. How good do you want to be?
I think training at Driveline and playing baseball for this long has really taught me just to keep going. I've been through so many plateaus and dips in my training where I thought that I just wasn't going to get any better and I was going to be stuck there. But, you know, training with Driveline made me realize that that's a normal thing and I'm going to get to the point that I want to be at if I just stay as consistent as I have been.